Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today, we're heading to India for a deep dive into Prayagraj.
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 You got it.
You know, this city, for centuries, was known as Allahabad. And I am really fascinated to dig into this one because you shared some really, really interesting material with me. We're going to be looking at excerpts today from historicalcityofprayagraj.pdf.
Sounds good.
And our goal is really to figure out, like, why this place is so important.
Yeah.
Why does this one city hold such a significant place in India's history?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, when you look at Prayagraj, you're really seeing kind of like a microcosm of Indian history itself.
Yeah.
All of these layers of history, mythology, religious development, cultural development, they all come together in this one spot.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what makes it so fascinating.
Absolutely. So let's start like right back at the beginning. In the material you sent over, it talks about Prayagraj being the site of ancient Prayag, which is mentioned in like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana.
Right.
These are like some of the most foundational
Absolutely.
narratives of Indian culture. So like, what is it about that origin story that is so significant?
Well, I mean, right away, it establishes this place as a sacred site. It's not just like an early settlement, but it's somewhere that's imbued with this deep meaning right from the beginning.
Yeah.
The text, it talks about the Hindu belief that Lord Brahma actually performed a yajna here for the creation of the universe.
Right.
Like, think about that. You're talking about the
Wow.
very act of cosmic genesis in Hindu cosmology.
Yeah.
And it's all tied to this one spot.
Yeah.
So it gives the city this kind of primordial importance, that really resonates even today, I think.
Yeah, and it's not just the the stories and the mythology. It's the geography too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the Triveni Sangam,
Right.
the meeting place of the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the mythical Sarasvati rivers.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's huge. I mean, if you think about rivers in Hinduism, right, they're seen as these life-giving forces. So the idea of a confluence, of it coming together is exceptionally sacred. And, the Sangam is believed to be a place where, if you bathe there, you can cleanse your sins.
Yeah.
So just the very act of these powerful rivers merging in this one spot creates this incredibly spiritually charged location.
Right.
It's no wonder that it's been drawing pilgrims for thousands of years.
And of course, that brings us to the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah.
This is like a massive
Absolutely.
religious festival held every 12 years at the Sangam.
Right.
And I mean, millions of people. Millions. It's almost unbelievable.
It is. It's hard to even fathom that many people in one place.
Right.
But, that just shows you the power of this event. And it's one of the largest peaceful gatherings in the world, which I think is really remarkable.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Think about the logistics of managing that many people, all drawn by this shared religious purpose.
Right.
And of course, the 2019 Kumbh Mela, which was in Prayagraj, was one of the largest in human history.
Right.
So it really underscores the enduring power of these traditions. They haven't faded away in the modern world.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, what is it about this place that draws so many people?
Yeah, it's a real testament to the power of faith.
Absolutely. So we've talked about these myths and these religious gatherings, but let's move into like the broader historical role that Prayagraj has played in India. The source material mentions, its prominence during the Maurya and Gupta periods, which are, way, way back.
Right.
What makes Prayagraj significant during those empires?
Well, if you think about its location, right, it's situated on these major river routes.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it would have been a really important center for both trade and cultural exchange. It was a place where people from all over would have come together, and that would have made it very vibrant.
Right.
Not just religiously, but also economically and intellectually.
Right. It would have been like a crossroads. Right.
Exactly. A real crossroads of people and ideas.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the arrival of the Mughals.
Right.
Particularly Emperor Akbar.
Yeah.
It seems like he really, saw how valuable strategically Prayagraj was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Akbar was a brilliant strategist, and he understood the importance of this region. And so establishing Prayagraj as an administrative and military center, that was a really smart move.
Right.
And it was under his rule, actually, that the name Allahabad came about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Allahabad, which means city of God, which later became Allahabad. Right.
And so his decision to invest in the city, really changed its landscape.
Yeah.
And made it one of the most important cities in the Mughal Empire.
And the Mughals, they weren't just focused on, governing and that kind of stuff. They also contributed a lot to the city's architecture.
That's right.
And urban planning, right?
Yeah.
What can we learn from, the physical?
Well, the architecture is really a tangible reminder of their presence. It tells the story of their influence. They brought new styles, new layouts, reflecting their own aesthetic and their own administrative needs. And so by looking at these buildings, even today, you can get a real sense of how the city was transformed during that period.
Right.
The Mughal legacy is very visible.
Then fast forward to, the British colonial era, and Prayagraj is, again, at the center of things.
Yeah.
This time in Indian politics.
It's amazing how this one place is just so important across so many different time periods.
Well, it speaks to that enduring significance, right?
Yeah.
That we've been talking about, the cultural importance, the strategic location. And so during the British Raj, Prayagraj became a key center for the independence movement. The text specifically mentions Jawaharlal Nehru's famous Allahabad address in 1940.
Yes.
Which was a real turning point.
A landmark moment.
Absolutely.
And what was it about Allahabad that made it such a focal point for the movement?
That's a good question. I think, it's partly its history, partly its location, its well-established infrastructure, and then probably also the intellectual and political climate that had developed there over the centuries.
Yeah.
The Allahabad Address wasn't just some isolated event.
Right.
It was part of a larger pattern of political activity. And even earlier than that, the source talks about the uprisings in Prayagraj during the 1857 rebellion. So there's this long history of resistance in the city.
Right. And beyond the political stuff, Prayagraj has also been like a center of culture and scholarship for centuries.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's long been known as a place where, literature and the arts have flourished. The text actually mentions Kalidasa, the famous poet and philosopher.
Right.
And his work is still considered foundational to Indian literature.
Kalidasa, a name that everyone knows.
Right. A real giant.
Yeah. And then, of course, later on, you have these big institutions like the University of Allahabad being founded.
Right.
Which, just shows how important education was and is in the city.
Exactly. And the University of Allahabad, founded in 1887, one of the oldest and most prestigious universities in the country.
And the cultural vibrancy, it goes beyond just like literature and academia. The source also mentions this rich tradition of like classical music and dance and drama linked to the city's temples and ashrams.
Right.
How did these places, these religious spaces?
Well, traditionally in India, temples and religious institutions have often been patrons of the arts.
Right.
They provide a space for these traditions to be cultivated and passed down.
Yeah.
And so the temples and ashrams of Prayagraj, they would have played a really important role in keeping those classical art forms alive.
Right. And then we also can't forget about Anand Bhavan, right?
Oh, of course.
The ancestral home of the Nehru family.
Yeah.
Which is now a museum.
Right.
And that really gives us a glimpse into the lives of, some of the people who really shaped modern India.
Yeah, it's a fascinating place. You can really see how their personal stories are intertwined with the larger history of India.
Yeah.
The struggle for independence and everything that followed.
And now we come to modern day Prayagraj.
Right.
The source mentions the renaming from Allahabad back to Prayagraj.
Yeah.
What's the significance of that?
Well, it's a symbolic act, right? It's a way of reclaiming the city's ancient identity.
Yeah.
It's a recognition of its deep Hindu roots and a history that goes back long before the Mughals.
Yeah.
So it's really a statement about cultural continuity.
Right. And Prayagraj today, it's not just some like relic of the past. Right.
Not at all.
It's a thriving modern city that's blending these ancient traditions with modern development.
Exactly. I mean, these old cities, they don't just stand still,
Right.
They evolve.
Yeah.
They adapt, they change. And Prayagraj is a great example of that.
Yeah.
It's still a center for education and commerce and, of course, spirituality, as we've seen with the Kumbh Mela. So it's really a remarkable place.
So we've gone through a really long and fascinating journey here.
We have.
We've talked about, the mythical origins of this city.
Yeah.
So, its role in trade, in culture, its importance under different empires, its role in the independence movement.
Absolutely.
Its rich cultural heritage, and everything leading up to its present-day identity as Prayagraj.
Right.
It's really a place where religion, culture, politics, it's all been woven together.
Yeah, it's like a tapestry, with all these different threads.
Yeah, and what I really take away from this is that, a place can be so much more than just lines on a map.
Oh, absolutely.
Or a dot on a map.
Yeah.
It's a living archive, of human history and belief.
It is. And I think, what's so fascinating is that it continues to evolve.
Yeah.
It's a living thing.
Yeah, and this deep dive has really got me thinking about how, a place with such a deep and layered history, like Prayagraj, continues to shape its own identity, its own future.
Right.
And what can we learn about ourselves, by looking at a place like this?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's something I'm going to be thinking about until our next deep dive.